The hardest part of pulling off a blockbuster trade in the NFL, well, convincing the other team to actually do the deal, which reportedly for Myles Garrett just got a lot harder after what the Browns just did. Plus, a new edge rusher has entered the trade market, and the Eagles might need to pivot. Oh, and who's the next internal free agent the Birds will sign? I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. Well, the offseason was never meant to be easy, as the rapidly approaching new league year and subsequent NFL free agency has the entire National Football League going crazy with trade requests, surprising cuts, and GM negotiations that will surely make next week one for the ages. The question, though, on everyone's mind in Philadelphia, what are the Birds going to do next? How can they reload and make sure they find themselves back in the big game in February of 2026? Well, if you're like me and think Myles Garrett is the answer to the Birds' problems, well, trading for him after the report that came out of Cleveland is going to be a lot more difficult. Just this past Friday morning, Tom Pelissero tweeted, quote, Brown star Myles Garrett recently requested a meeting with owner Jimmy Haslam, who declined to speak amidst Garrett's trade request, per sources. Both sides are dug in. Cleveland refuses to even discuss a trade, while Garrett is preparing to miss games if he's not traded. Adding later on that Myles Garrett has made it clear since the end of last season that he wants to continue his Hall of Fame career elsewhere. The Browns organization, from ownership to GM to coach, is aligned on the offseason plan, which does not include trading Myles Garrett. Stay tuned. Now, this naturally creates a lot of problems if you're Philadelphia and have reportedly expressed interest, at least seriously, in trading for Myles Garrett's services, as the first step in any sort of blockbuster deal with the Browns is actually getting the Browns to agree to trade him. If they don't agree on a trade, or even worse, they take too long to finally grant Garrett's trade wish, Philadelphia might be forced to look elsewhere and risk not landing an edge rusher at all this offseason. Which this whole thing is so wild from the Browns' perspective, because if you don't want to trade him, and yet he's not going to play unless you do trade him, wouldn't you want to at least meet together face-to-face and talk this whole thing out and try to come to a solution instead of just saying, we're not trading you and I'm not talking to you as well? Plus, the image hit that the Browns are going to take from this, show half the respect Myles Garrett deserves for even playing this many years for such a poorly run organization. You gotta at least talk to him and try and figure things out. This whole thing is wild to me. Thankfully, though, Garrett does technically hold all the cards here. He's made enough money to hold out for the long run and keep the pressure on the Browns front office, and in these cases, players usually win and eventually will get their trade wish granted. My problem, though, again, is from the Eagles' perspective. How long will the standoff actually last? A few days, until the NFL draft, maybe until training camp? With free agency next week, Philadelphia can't wait that long, which does lead us to the possible gift from the football gods that dropped right after the Garrett news yesterday, as the Bengals officially granted their star pass rusher Trey Hendrickson permission to seek a trade, according to Adam Schefter. Now, Hendrickson, I think, is probably the least known superstar edge rusher in the entire National Football League. He had 17.5 sacks, not just last year, but in 2023 as well, and has double-digit sacks in 4 of his last 5 years in Cincy. 2024 alone, he was third overall in pressure percentage, first in sacks and sack percentage, and third in pass rush win rate. In fact, the last 2 seasons, he has 7 more sacks than Myles Garrett, with both star edge rushers basically the same age entering their 9th season in the league. And that's not all. The best part of the whole Trey Hendrickson trade news is the fact that his trade price, according to reports, is going to be a lot cheaper than Myles Garrett. According to CBS's lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones, the Bengals are seeking a late second round or early third round pick for Hendrickson's services. So essentially, a much cheaper edge rusher who technically has more sacks than Myles Garrett the past 2 seasons. Sign me up for that right now. Also, for the past few months, I've been partnering with channel sponsor Bombas to promote their clothing items and socks, and at this point, whenever I'm not wearing my Eagles gear, I'm pretty much only wearing Bombas. Bombas has spent years designing the most comfortable and durable socks on the market, and their new athletic shop is here to support you in any workout. All of their athletic socks are designed with sweat-wicking yarns and strategic cushioning to keep you comfortable during any activity. My first Bombas purchases were actually their socks, which I'm wearing right now. I wonder if I could pull these off and show you. Prove that I'm actually wearing them. You see them here. There you go. It's one of my Bombas socks. Incredibly comfortable. But recently, I got their flyleaf boxers, which are awesome for working out. I also got a pair of their ski socks, which I didn't go skiing this year, unfortunately. I did wear them to the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia, and they kept my feet incredibly warm. Bombas also gives away millions of socks to places like homeless shelters, rehab centers, and to medical service professionals as part of their one purchase equals one donation promise. In fact, Bombas makes the top 3 most requested clothing items at homeless shelters across the nation. And right now, new customers can get 20% off your first purchase by going to bombas.com/ThomasMod. Use promo code ThomasMod at checkout. Trust me, just try their socks. You're going to absolutely love them. Now, of course, the whole reason this cheap price is actually possible is due mainly in part to the Raiders giving Max Crosby $35.5 million a year just the other day, which immediately told the Bengals they cannot afford to beat that, as Hendrickson will likely demand an even bigger contract. And of course, if is the big kicker here. If the Eagles are actually in on a star edge rusher and willing to drop the cash on the required extension, Henderson makes a lot more sense than Garrett, at least at the moment in time, thanks to the Browns refusing to listen to trade calls for Myles, and the Bengals only asking a second or third rounder for Hendrickson's services. Now, naturally, Philadelphia is not the only team looking for a superstar edge rusher, as a new report dropped yesterday from U Stadium. The Commanders themselves are also very interested in both Hendrickson and Myles Garrett, leading to the price for either services potentially rising in a bidding war, but things are happening very fast. Next week, I really think for edge rushers is going to be absolutely crazy. I am curious y'all's thoughts on Trey Hendrickson. He was not really an option past couple of days, and we were all in on Myles Garrett, which I definitely still am. If you can get Myles Garrett, you definitely try to. But if Myles Garrett is not going to be granted a trade request from the Cleveland Browns, then Trey Hendrickson, if you want a superstar, is really the next best option. Now, right now, if you're typing in the comments, Thomas, we can't afford Garrett, we can't afford Hendrickson, well, you're going to love the other edge rusher news that dropped Friday afternoon, as the Titans are officially releasing their star pass rusher, Harold Landry. Now, I did do a video breakdown on Harold Landry about 2 weeks ago, but essentially, he's had 31.5 sacks the past 3 seasons, and is, in my opinion, a legit stud defensive end that you haven't heard a ton about because he's been on the terrible Titans. He's clearly not in the same class as Goedert or Hendrickson, but you also don't have to trade for him, and whatever contract you do sign him to in free agency will 100% be less than Garrett, Hendrickson, and maybe even Josh Sweat. Honestly, I love Harold Landry in Philadelphia. Now, moving over to less speculation and more fun, the Eagles released their Super Bowl mic'd up YouTube video on Thursday, which, by the way, if you haven't watched it, is absolutely incredible to watch. I was smiling the entire time, but the viral moment from the entire video is Jalen Hurts seemingly wanting to stay in the game in the fourth quarter and run the score up on the Chiefs. Watch this.
Hey.
That was probably a hold on.
Are you sure? We're done?
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, I'm sure. You sure?
Love it, man.
Way too.
Way to play, baby.
Get that ball back, man. If I had Philly, I'd have let that ride.
We up 40-something.
I know, bro, but I mean, we killing. Huh? I'm saying no.
Now, I obviously can't argue with Hurts wanting more, but Sirianni, I think, was right to pull them early. Let the backups play in the Super Bowl is honestly a very nice gesture, and more importantly, he's keeping his starters healthy. A knee injury in garbage time of a Super Bowl, which you're blowing the Chiefs out in, means a long off-season of recovery that really might result in them not being ready for Week 1. Still, though, gotta give respect to QB1 for wanting to stomp the Chiefs into oblivion. He was absolutely on it all game long and did not want to let his foot off the gas. Moving over to Twitter drama, and we got a slight update on the CJ Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay beef following Slay's podcast rant about leadership in the secondary that then Gardner-Johnson took offense to and then lashed out on Twitter, to which Slay officially responded on Friday saying, quote, "We just won a Super Bowl together. I do not have no problem or hate towards Bra. Reed is in our leadership council, which is why I said what I said. I would expect him to be the next guy up. It's nothing but love on my end. If you really know me, y'all have a blessed day. #WorldChamps. But, of course, this wasn't the end of it, as A.J. Brown then sent out a fury of tweets, which he quickly deleted, essentially saying that Eagles Twitter people speculate too much, which helps spur the national media into taking shots at Eagle players. And honestly, the whole thing to me is pretty dumb. I gotta cover it here naturally because we talk about the Eagles on this channel, and it's kind of going viral on Twitter right now. A.J. Brown is right, though. People just read tweets and take them at face value, and then they throw all these different meanings and thoughts into them. I clearly think Darius Slay and CJ Gardner-Johnson are having some beef, but is it as bad as Twitter's making it out to seem? It doesn't really seem to be the case. Honestly, I'd rather cover stuff like Isaiah Rodgers, whose impending free agency next week is going to be a key factor in what the Philadelphia Eagles do going forward. But, well, of course, his future is up in the air. He still took time to send this young Eagles fan a signed jersey, with some signed cleats as well, for his 9th birthday. I absolutely love stuff like this, especially when young kids get their entire years made by NFL stars. But of course, we don't know what Philadelphia is going to do, how quickly they'll do it. Will they trade? Will they not trade? Who will they sign? That's why myself and Josh Davis met earlier this week to break down everything we currently know about what's going on with the Eagles and NFL free agency. Now, everything else that he does, which does not include Becton, Isaiah Rodgers, and Cam Jurgens and stuff like that, is truly going to be icing on the cake. And now you really have to sit back and wonder, what is Howie Roseman thinking? Because he has two ways of thinking or approaching the new league year coming up on Monday. A, his 2024 Super Bowl team that was once up 34-0 on the Kansas City Chiefs and had 40-plus points dropped on the vaunted Chiefs defense is essentially coming back, and it's going to be exactly the same, right? But and again, draft picks are going to be added into there, maybe a cheap free agent here or there that could pop. But last year's team, or I guess this year's team, is going to be very similar. He can sit on that and do nothing, and we're probably going to win the NFC East. We'll be one of the favorites in the National Football League, and they have a very real chance to run it back. There is also a Howie Roseman scenario. It's almost that Kermit the Frog, sits meme where he's got the hood on. He's saying, you know what? What if we added Myles Garrett? What if we made a big splash? And let's just say this on Myles Garrett, Josh. I know that Ian Rappaport said today that the Browns are adamant that they're not trading Myles Garrett, which is so funny because it's very much team speak and team propaganda, because Myles Garrett has said, like, you got to trade me. I'm not re-signing. He also said Philly can't afford him. Philly can't afford him. Philly 100% can afford him, and it could be where they need to restructure Cam Jurgens. They need to restructure Jalen Hurts' contract sooner rather than later, and then they just find a way to make the Myles Garrett contract work, and they go as all in as humanly possible the next 2 seasons. And if Howie thinks that it's worth it, he's going to go ahead and pull the trigger. But the good news is, Josh, that is still very much a dream and very much could happen, but they also have pretty much locked up the ability to duplicate the 2024 team that dropped 55 points in the NFC Championship game and dominated the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
It's unbelievable. It's believable because it's Howie Roseman, but it's unbelievable because of where you're at and all the other acquisitions. And like you say, so many other opportunities. I'm going to get to these super chats too. Nathan, appreciate the 5 bomb, says, does this make, we kind of already went there a little bit, but does this make getting Myles Garrett impossible because you have to sign him after you trade for him? And what's the cap number now? So we kind of broke that one down. I had the super chat up waiting to talk about it, but Nathan, we did go over that obviously. And no, not impossible by any means. If anything, maybe more likely because of where the cap space is going to be.
Well, and you could always, listen, Myles Garrett, he could be yelling at his agent, get me to Philadelphia. I don't care what it takes. I want to be an Eagle. That's the only place I want to go. I'll make sure it's team-friendly. And Myles Garrett, who's gotten a couple of big contracts, not like this is his first contract as an edge rusher, he could very easily take a slightly more team-friendly deal. You know who did that last year, Josh? Some guy named Saquon Barkley, who we know for a fact had more money on the table to be a Houston Texan. And he said, you know what? I want to go play behind the Philadelphia Eagle offensive line. Maybe a little bit of a risk. Let's see what happens. Worked out pretty well. Went from $13 million a year to 21, right? Myles Garrett could be saying the exact same thing. I could go be a New England Patriot. I could go be a Carolina Panther. All this money could be thrown my way. I'll still get a big bag. Let's take a little bit less and play on that Eagle defensive line and maybe break the sack record. I don't know. It could be crazy.
Yeah, Myles Garrett was saying that he's wanting to play for a contender. He was not about money. He's made a ton of money. He wants to win. So that's where push comes to shove. Like, how much are we talking about? But it's by no means impossible. Do the Browns, play ball? Are they willing to trade at some point? It feels like they have to, but you never know. Damon's appreciate the shout out here. Says this is what I've been waiting on. Let's go. The Zach Bond news, obviously. Jay with a 2 wanted to ask a Pitts for Huff trade. Atlanta to Philly. I guess that's maybe wanted to ask like a question if that's possible or bring that topic up. I'm not sure, but
I would do it because Kyle Pitts is on a rookie deal. The Falcons are not going to eat the Bryce Huff contract, unfortunately. And I see people saying Bryce Huff should restructure his deal. There's no way in hell Bryce Huff's agent is going to let Bryce Huff restructure his current contract because it's not happening after what we saw this past year. Bryce Huff is going to be an Eagle at $17 million a year in 2025, and we have to live with that.
It's it's probably a pipe dream. I was going to say not quite, but it pretty much is. We would take it though if you can, and there's a possibility of Howie Roseman fleecing the Falcons, I suppose. But yeah, it would take a lot. I know that hey, Jeff Ulbrich, Bryce Huff's old defensive coordinator, is now in Atlanta. There's reasons that it doesn't make complete nonsense, but it just feels like a whole lot to convince a team to say, there was not much there. But again, Ulbrich saw success from Bryce Huff, so maybe he says, you know what, look, you just used him in the wrong way. Now, we're not going to pay the market rate for him, but we'll take a little bit of an offset. Never impossible, but we'll see. Beastguard 24 with a 5. Everything Howie does after this, there you go. After this, Zach Bond is icing on the cake. Glad the bald eagle is back. I can finally sleep peacefully. So for those of you not able to sleep near as well, it should be better because you got the main one taken care of. Anthony with the 2. The Bond supremacy return for the sequel. That. That's actually pretty good. I'm going to skip to Aiden's real quick. I'm sorry. I'm going to skip to Anthony's again, and then I'm going to get back to the others because he followed up here with the 5 and said Bond identity to Bond supremacy to now our very own Bond ultimatum. He is ours. So
there you go. Sounds
with
good to
that
me.
Theme there. Let's go.
That is the thing that nobody, we did just mention it, but no one in the media has talked about what does year 2 Zach Bond look like? Year 1 is all pro. What does year 2 look like? If he trends even higher, this is going to look like an absolute steal of a contract being the 5th or 4th highest paid linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, it's just crazy because the people are. It always it never fails to amaze me of how many people, especially during free agents period. There's other times during the season, but especially during like free agency or right around like, hey, let's get everything finalized. Like, oh, the Eagles won't be able to do this. They're not going to be able to sign this team. They're not going to have the cap space. Oh, just wait. They're going to pay the bill. Eventually it's going to come due. And just about every single offseason, people go, well, for some reason they don't. And the reason is Howie Roseman. So, CNK with the super chat here. Zach to the future. Let's freaking go. Good. That's a good one there. Star Devil, Zach Bond, the Bald Eagle. I think that's got to be like his unofficial nickname. I've heard some people go back and forth, but the Bald Eagle just makes too much sense. There's other guys, of course, on the team that are bald, but it's Zach Bond. Let's see, GJ. QJ, I believe, with the 2 says, you guys think we get Myles Garrett? So question here. We're a little bit late to some of these super chats, so I'm sure we've.
What's the percentage? Let's put it. I'm going to go 30%. We get Myles Garrett. I think I've said as high as 40. Yep. I think the Crosby market reset is at least an eye opener for fans. I know the Eagles were obviously aware of what the price would be for Myles Garrett, but I think it's 30% they get Myles Garrett, 70% they don't. How about that?
That's fair. Actually, it's funny you say that too, because I would say 30% as well. In the last video, I mentioned it because before I was like, 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
But these moves that Howie's making and where he's trying to gather some cap space from, and there's even a report, by the way, I think Jeff McClain was the first one to say this, but Lane Johnson, there's a potential if he could get a restructured deal. So like that type of thing there, it's not official yet, but if he were to, you just start trying to read the tea leaves and go like, what is Howie doing? Like that's not one of those restructurings that you really have to do necessarily, unless you're saying, no, we need some cap space for this season to make more room. So it only seems to suggest that, okay, there might be a little bit more here of Howie thinking that it's possible, and then let's just go ahead and push this thing all in now. So I would say I'm probably at the same point. Instead of 10 to 15%, I would go up to 30. I like that number.
Well, and here's where Howie is most likely at, right? They have put out feelers to the Cleveland Browns. You know how he's called. I could say with 100% certainty, I would bet like my entire life on the fact that Howie Roseman has called the Browns at least. So I'm sure it's happened. He's called the Browns. The Browns are obviously trying to get way more than, they know they can for Myles Garrett. Mm-hmm. And so they probably said, we need 3 first-rounders or 2 first-rounders. And Howie said, no, we'll give you 32 overall and a 2026 third and maybe something else. And he hung up the phone. And now he's letting it incubate. He's going to let the Browns call other teams to see where he kind of gauges. And he's also going to probably somehow get some little birds into the agent's ears legally, not illegal tampering, legally,
for sure,
Myles Garrett, to kind of make sure Garrett's telling the Browns he wants to be an Eagle. And then push comes to shove, the Browns realize he's going to go no matter what. He only wants to go to Philadelphia. Boom, they pull the trigger and it happens tomorrow or Saturday or Tuesday of next week. We don't know, but that's likely where we're at. The Browns have asked for too much. Howie has given a counteroffer, and now they're waiting for time, which is the Eagles' best asset right now, to make the Browns sweat this one out and try to get something for Myles Garrett when it's all said and done.
And if anything, it's a very, very small factor. But if anything, the feeling of let's at least trade him to an NFC team than an AFC team, there's less likely that we run into him again. So, maybe there's an extra point of that. Andrew Berry being close, of course, that relationship plays a factor. But definitely not rule it out. I would say that. Damon's with a 5. Appreciate that. Says, now I'm waiting for y'all to go live and say we got Myles. So see, there we go again.
Can you imagine that one?
I'm curious. We'll see. I might start the poll again because last week we did it and 60% of people said no to Myles Garrett. So let's see. Well, let's see how this has changed. I'm going to put this up here now. Do you think the Eagles will get Myles Garrett? Let's see where this poll ends up today. Because last week, like I say, was 60% no. Maybe it's at the same. I feel like the percentages, as you and I have both said too, that it's a little closer. Even if it's 50-50, that's more than the very early voting has a lot more yeses, 67%. It'll creep down. I know that though. We'll see that. We'll keep an eye on where that poll is. IBH with a 5. Let's see. Love to see Becton as far as next who's Becton, Burks, and Zay. I would be satisfied with that. Sweat would be a nice bonus. And then, of course, go Howie.
There you
A
go.
lot of people. That would keep a lot of people happy.
Sweat would be a bonus. I'll just say again, Philadelphia will be okay with Josh Sweat. I said it last week. If you look at Josh Sweat throughout his entire career, he's been never really a double-digit sack guy. He's an 8, 9, 7 sack guy. He had a really great final quarter of the season. He had a fantastic playoff run. Is he worth $20 million a year? I don't think the Eagles are going to pay that in the end. Now, they might, and they can, and I'm fine with that, but I would bet he goes somewhere else.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And another guy, which I'll get to this other super chat here in a second, from Cooperus was Slay, who did, of course, say, and I think I've actually got the tweet. Well, he was on the facility, but I'll briefly put it up here. We're not going to play the actual clip, of course, because we can't for copyright. But Slay basically saying he would like to be with the Eagles if the money is right. Now, if you listen to the full clip, the full take there, Slay, he deserves a bag if he's going to get it on his final year. Totally well worth it. Go for it, all that. But it's not like there's a ridiculous, or unrealistic scenario for Slay to return, because we have seen this before. So that avenue as well. And we've heard Howie Roseman say, look, any player basically that is available, any option, whatever you want to call it, we will be looking into it. So that was the reassurance to fans, but also saying at the same time, there may be some things that look a little bit unorthodox or unconventional wisdom on the moves that they make. So is the Zach Bond signing one of those that he was alluding to, or is it some of the, hey, we might have to move on from some of these veterans like a Slay? We don't know necessarily, but you freed up some cap space. I would lean towards it's not, but if it is, again, you bring back Isaiah Rodgers, you get solidified in some of the other areas. You drafted a ridiculous secondary as it is, and you got Christian Parker and Fangio's defense. There's just so many things to like about that. So I'm not freaking out. Some people would have you believe that Slay being gone is like, oh my gosh, the secondary's going to get torched for some reason, but I think that's just the haters out there. Realistic people realize what this group is. But we will see. Back to the Myles Garrett, though. Cooperus with a 10. Say you're Myles Garrett agent. Philly wants him, and they'll restructure to get you, but it'll pay more on the back end and will be perfect based because of Saquon. Do you take it with the best chance for rings, obviously? So,
yes. I mean, it's so hard to say. And Anthony DeBona
it depends
had a really
on what he
great
wants
tweet.
Compensation.
Yes, and DeBona had a great tweet saying that you can never judge a NFL player for going and choosing money over winning, because some people, want to make a massive bag. Some people like Zach Bond haven't made a massive bag. And if Zach Bond would have left for $21 million a year, I would have been really upset. But it's like, hey, if Philly's offer was 17, you want to get 4 extra a year, you do you. Plus, he already got a ring. I do think Myles Garrett is at a point in his career, 28, 29, getting close to 30 years old, where he has made a ton of money. A ton of money. And he still is going to make a ton of money. The Eagles aren't giving him a veteran minimum, right? They're going to make him one of the highest paid people not to play quarterback in the NFL. But I do think there is something to him never playing in a significant game. I mean, that one Baker Mayfield playoff run is kind of the last time that the Browns even had a relevant shot at winning a playoff game. They weren't Super Bowl favorites in that AFC playoff run by any means. And I think that matters, whereas Milton Williams and Josh Sweat want their bag because they haven't really gotten it throughout their entire career, and they just got a ring. Milton Williams can finish his career 3 years from now, have a pretty successful final 3 seasons, and his career will be looked at as a massive success overall because he won a Super Bowl and was one of the best defenders on that Bird Super Bowl team. Same goes for Josh Sweat. I think that matters for Myles Garrett. The question will be, Josh, I think this is the real question, how bad do the Commanders want him? Because the Commanders can offer probably a little more than Philadelphia, especially more money, and they technically give him a chance to play in meaningful games. Now, if I was someone who wanted to win football games and go to a Super Bowl, I would not want to be in the same division as Philadelphia. If I'm gonna be close to Philadelphia, I want to be on the Eagles. I don't want to have to play the Eagles twice and go through them to get to the NFC Championship game and hopefully a Super Bowl. But if there was a team that could be really scary for him, that also has potential to win a lot in 2025, it'd be the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and, Myles Garrett said, I think at least once, but I believe multiple times, about how difficult it is, obviously, to play against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. So, if you had an opportunity to join them versus play them twice in a season as well, I don't know, feels like there's a guarantee of, look, if ultimately, you got to be honest with yourself. And you can't, at the same time, I will not knock Myles Garrett, as no one else should, that if he wants to go chase the bag, go get it. Absolutely. There's a way to do both. But if it ultimately is, I want to win a championship, I want to play in meaningful games, and I want to win a Super Bowl, I'm sorry. Like, Commanders are close, but they're not that close to the Eagles at the moment. You go to Philly, and that is just a drastic difference there. So, yes, we're biased, of course, but still, even objectively speaking, go look around the league and see players or people talking about like what the Eagles have right now. And if Myles Garrett goes to Philly, what's going to happen? Everyone's terrified of that thought. It's like, you got to be, if they get Myles Garrett, no, nobody else wants that to happen for Philly, because it's just a mismatch nightmare already. And then it gets ridiculous. So we'll see. It ultimately comes down to what is the absolute 100% first priority for Myles Garrett. I think it's very legit. He seems to like Philly from the things that he said. You even look at the body language and everything else from training camps that they've had over here. So who knows? The yeses right now, though, 56%, which is a drastic swing from a week ago. So just the pulse check of Philly fandom.
Everybody
we're
wants
there as well.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, why not? Howie's basically playing Madden, which feels unreal. But as a general manager, the way that he structures it, it's essentially playing Madden and putting ridiculous players together. Mad with a 5. Can you guys tell Colin Cowherd to shut the F up about trading A.J. Brown? And got a super chat from Ben, but I didn't see a comment, but we appreciate that, Ben.
Yeah, the A.J. Brown thing is great. You talked about it on your show yesterday. It's all stemming from just like a 5-second rundown on the A.J. Brown thing. There are Patriot reporters who are saying the Patriots have called the Eagles about A.J. Brown. Okay, that's a good headline grabber, Josh. Did the Eagles, answer the phone? And what was the Eagles' response to wanting, A.J. Brown trade to
exactly?
It was probably, hey, guys, you want A.J. Brown? Goodbye. And that was it. That's the bulk of what happened between that. The Patriots are looking for a number 1 receiver. I think DK Metcalf makes a ton of sense. Today, he requested a trade. That's all been put out there. A.J. Brown's not getting traded at all. And the dead cap Philadelphia would have to eat by trading A.J. Brown, Josh, is the main reason why.
It makes no sense in the world. I was trying to find the headline article, and I can't quite find it right now. But yes, it is I think it was Greg Bedard, if I'm not mistaken, but one individual who's reporting and basically saying like, hey, the most realistic one to me is A.J. Brown out of your DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk. There was one other receiver I'm drawing up, T. Higgins, I think. And I'm like, first off, I don't think that's just ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry. Out of all those, you think that's the most reasonable get? I know the Mike Vrabel connection. Sure, that makes sense of that personal connection. But no, like the Eagles are not getting rid of A.J. Brown, especially in this window of sorts that we're talking about to go win now. A.J. loves Philly, regardless of what either the very close media, some very close media members will say, or the national media members will paint him in a certain light. He's here. He's a team player. He's going to be here long term. But it's like you said, that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's a headline grabber because someone told somebody, hey, the Patriots are calling about A.J. Brown. It's like, no, it's not the Eagles are having discussions to trade A.J. Brown. It's the Patriots are calling. You could literally say the Patriots are calling about any player in the league. That's not meaning that it's going to happen. So, Jingle with a 2. What's the next move from here in your guys' eyes? Well, we touched on a couple different ones. I guess if we were just hypothetically spitballing here, what would be the very next move, the first initial move you see from Howie?
You would think it'd be Jurgens, Becton, in either order, A or B, whichever you want to go first. You would think Jurgens and then Becton, right? From there, though, Josh, it does get cloudy, and I think it all centers around Isaiah Rodgers. I think Isaiah Rodgers is a priority, but I think Isaiah Rodgers wants to see what Monday looks like in the open free agent market because Isaiah Rodgers hasn't been paid, right, in the National Football League. He's not gotten that massive contract. And I could see Isaiah Rodgers being a guy who goes, I got my ring in Philadelphia, and the Raiders want to give me $7 more million a year than the Eagles do. And so, hey, I'm going to go get my bag and secure my family's future for 3 or 4 generations, and more power to him. But I do think that he does like the idea of being a starter in Philadelphia on Vic Fangio's defense, what that could mean for his potential long-term career. He, to me, is kind of the linchpin of the next 5 days because he will determine whether the Eagles bring back Darius Slay. Same thing goes for Slay. Does he want to go out there and get a big bag or not? Those 3 of Jurgens, Becton's, Rodgers are kind of the 3 likely next couple of moves. Then the question becomes, if it's Myles Garrett, when, how much? If it's not Myles Garrett, what else are they going to do? Because they're going to sign some sort of cheaper free agent like they did with Bond and Isaiah Rodgers. Obviously not free agency, but with Isaiah Rodgers this past year.
Yes. I would say I'm with you on that. I'm leaning towards, you're trying to get something done now before you get into free agency. I know that you say let someone, maybe see what they're worth otherwise. But I kind of feel like Mekhi Becton, and I was putting up the breaking news from several hours ago, of course, but the Chiefs, obviously trading Joe Thuney to the Bears.
How about that? Yeah.
Kind of a shocking move, a little bit surprising. Didn't necessarily see that, but with the other franchise tag of who was it? It was Trey. It was Trey Smith, right? The franchise tag that the Chiefs made before.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're reshuffling. They got to figure things out for their cap. I can't remember who the first tweet, so I apologize if I'm going to get this wrong. So I don't know who first pointed this out, but it's just telling as far as where the potential guard market is. I know that he's a guard slash tackle, but that to me is one of the parts for Mekhi Becton to say, okay, if you got Chicago out there who could go and just spend money, but they say, no, it's worth it to us to go and trade for a guy, then maybe the market's not necessarily as great as you would want. So
very interesting point.
That's going to play both sides. Is it Mekhi Becton maybe can get more of a deal? But then again, to the flip side of that, wouldn't Chicago have been like, hey, let's just wait. We don't have to necessarily force this move very quick. We could wait to free agency and, maybe see about signing Mekhi Becton if they felt that was the guy that they'd need at that position there. So I don't know. I would lean towards Mekhi Becton. We'll see. Obviously, nobody knows, but just another point to be made, I guess, as far as free agency and what that might mean for the Eagles.
I keep saying it, but next week's going to be crazy. Hit the notification bell and subscribe. The way you guys are the first to know whenever things happen. We'll cover it all here on the channel. Thomas Mott, this has been the Thomas Mott Show.